Let's start our day 6 with a new topic, exception handling. When we start learning exception handling, very first question that comes to our mind is what is exception? To understand exception, we first have to understand normal termination of a program and abnormal termination of a program. Let's first understand normal termination of a program. When you run a Java program, let's say main method start getting execute line by line, step by step, and it reach to its end point or its closing point, and then from the closing curly braces, it gets terminate, then that type of termination is known as normal termination of a Java program. But let's suppose in other hand, if your program is running step by step, line by line, but due to some abnormal condition, program get abnormally terminate even before it reaches to its closing curly braces. It terminates before that itself on some certain line where the abnormal condition raise. Then that type of termination is known as abnormal termination of a Java program. Now let's understand what is exception. As I told you, when your program is executing normally, but some abnormal condition disrupts your normal flow of program, then that abnormal condition, which is basically interrupting your normal execution of program and abnormally terminates your program, that abnormal condition is known as exception. Okay. And this exception handling is nothing but the topic where we are going to learn how we can handle those abnormal conditions, how we can handle those exceptions, so that we can avoid abnormal termination of a Java program. So, how we can deal with this? In exception handling, we are going to define some alternative path in our code. Okay, those alternative paths will execute in case if my program will throw some exception. Then those alternative path or those alternative code will get execute and my program will not abnormally terminate. And this is how we can prevent abnormal termination of a Java program by using this technique, by using this approach, which is known as exception handling. Now, there is a point. We cannot prevent our code from every single exception. We cannot prevent the code in 100% use cases. Okay, most of the cases we will be able to handle, but there are few cases which we cannot even handle. For example, some hardware failure is there, some memory shortage or some memory issue is there, some resource that you are accessing database or something which is outside the boundaries of JVM is not available or not accessible. So those type of failure cannot be handled. Okay, and for those type of cases my program will abnormally get terminate and those will become errors. So errors are nothing but the abnormal conditions that cannot be handled becomes error, and those abnormal conditions which will be able to handle are known as exceptions, and that is the difference between exception and error. Now in Java, to represent exceptions or errors we have dedicated classes. So in Java, exceptions or errors are nothing but the classes and objects. For every single abnormal condition is defined by that appropriate exception class, which is responsible to represent that type of exception or error. So we have classifications of exceptions, and for every single exception we have a certain exception class that represent that particular exception. We are going to learn what are the different type of exceptions and exception classes are there in classification of exception in next topic.